Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the destruction that rains have caused in Assam. We also talk about a sub-variant of Omicron being detected in India and how it could lead to a COVID-19 wave. But first, we talk about the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or the RSS, which is the ideological parent of the BJP. On Sunday, an event took place to celebrate 75 years of Organizer and Paanchjanya, two magazines which are essentially mouthpieces of the RSS. The event was attended by various RSS and BJP leaders, including the chief ministers of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Goa and Assam. That is Yogi Adityanath, Pushkar Singh Dhami, Pramod Sawant and Himanta Biswa Sharma, all of whom spoke at length about various national issues that have been creating controversies in the country. In this segment, Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwari joins us to talk about it. So Deeptiman, what are the kind of things that these BJP leaders said during this event?
Well, essentially, they spoke about the work done by their respective governments for the welfare of the people and development of the state, and they rattled out all the schemes that they have launched for the welfare of the people and all the development projects which are on in the state. But apart from this, they also spoke about certain national issues, which included the controversy over temples and mosques and loudspeakers, or namaz prayers, or communal riots, or this entire thing of Muslim assertion of identity, or the idea of madrasas. All of these things were spoken about by various chief ministers, particularly by UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant, and Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma.
Yeah, and in fact, Yogi Adityanath said that the volume of mosque loudspeakers have gone down now, and both Pramod Sawant and Pushkar Singh Dhami talked about the need to implement the Uniform Civil Code, right?
Correct. In fact, the entire thing started with Pushkar Singh Dhami, who was the first speaker, answering a question on Uniform Civil Code. He said that, he was committed to it, and that by the time he probably reached his state from this event, people could read in the newspapers that a committee has already been formed to deliberate on Uniform Civil Code. On the same issue, Pramod Sawant said that his state has had Uniform Civil Code since liberation of Goa from Portuguese rule in 1961. And he said that he sees no reason why other states should not implement Uniform Civil Code. To which the interviewer, that is Praful Ketkar, who is the editor of the Organizer, the RSS affiliated magazine, he said that Goa UCC is a great example as to why it should not be opposed, because there is a considerable minority in Goa, which has never had any problems with Uniform Civil Code. So there is no reason why any other minority in the country should fear Uniform Civil Code. So obviously, it appears to be a preparation of ground for creating significant public opinion in favor of UCC.
Yeah, and for those who may not be aware, the idea of a Uniform Civil Code is one that would provide one law for the entire country, regardless of all religious communities, and would govern personal matters like marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption.
Look, Uniform Civil, depending upon what kind of Uniform Civil Code is framed. Now, if a Uniform Civil Code is framed which takes the good practices from all religions, where rights of women are protected, where inheritance laws are equal for both men and women, so all of those, if they are incorporated, they'll probably be more agreeable to all religions. The only fear that probably minorities may have, that the Uniform Civil Code does not become the Hindu Civil Code. That is the only fear. For example, many Muslim scholars point out that Islam, in some ways, ensures far greater Muslim personal laws, ensures far greater rights to women in marriage than probably the Hindu code. For example, they say that there is a prenuptial agreement which is not there among the Hindus, and there are certain rights to divorced women which are there in the Muslim personal laws. So whether they can be included in the UCC. Then there are inheritance issues. which, while the courts have given equal rights to inheritance to women, it is still not codified as far as Hindus are concerned. So all of that will have to be discussed, debated, and included in UCC for it to be acceptable to all. So it remains to be seen how this pans out in the long run.
And Uniform Civil Code is something that both BJP and the RSS have wanted for a really long time, right?
Yeah, it's one of the core issues of RSS, and it has been there since the very beginning. They have always wanted Uniform Civil Code, especially largely got greater push from the RSS following the Shah Bano judgment of the 80s, where the then Rajiv Gandhi government was seen to have buckled under pressure of Muslim clerics, and a relief granted by the Supreme Court to the woman in that case was overridden by a law passed by the parliament, which saw a lot of opposition from progressive Muslims also. So, yeah, it has been a core issue of the RSS since the very beginning.
Okay, so Uniform Civil Code was one of the things that was talked about during this event. What were some of the other issues and statements that stood out for you?
Yeah, another was, of course, coming in from entire temple mosque controversy that we see raging in the country today. On that, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath said that ever since his government has come to power for the second time, not only were there, no riots, whether during the elections or after the elections, but Ram Navami passed off peacefully, Hanuman Jayanti passed off peacefully, and they both were celebrated with great fervor without any incident. Now this comes on the back of some incidents that we have seen where two communities have had clashes over celebrations, be it in the Jahangir Puri incident or elsewhere. And, Hanuman Jayanti and Hanuman Chalisa have become a political issue currently in the country. Then he said that ever since his government has come to power for the second time, people must have seen that Eid Namaz is not being read on the roads. And he said that more than 1 lakh loudspeakers have had either their volumes toned down or been completely removed. So he was counting all of these as achievements of his government since it has come to power. He also said that during his entire first tenure, there were no riots in UP. Then Pramod Sawant, the Goa chief minister, he said that the Portuguese in their 450 years rule on Goa destroyed Hindu culture and destroyed temples, and that he had made a budgetary allocation for rejuvenation, rebuilding of those temples. He also said that across the country, there is no reason why temples destroyed earlier should not be rebuilt. It becomes significant in the wake of the Gyanvapi Mosque controversy, which is going on right now.
And you mentioned that Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma was also there during this event. What were the kind of things that we heard from him?
So more starkly, the attack on the minority community actually came from Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma, who said that madrasas should be abolished completely, and anyone who talks about madrasas being abolished and talks about Uniform Civil Code, Muslims should consider such a person their friend. He said that from madrasas, doctors and engineers cannot come out, they can only come out from regular schools. So if Muslims want to teach the Quran to their children, they should do it at their home. So many will point out, of course, whether he could have said the same thing about Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, to a question which was very interesting, because one Muslim person from the audience, he posed a question that these small children who in the madrasas, basically learn the Quran, they are very good at learning. So this energy of these children can be channelized, and, they can be given modern education, and they can be given a direction so that they can progress in life. To which Himanta Biswa Sharma said that, in fact, if they are doing well in a madrasa and they are bright, then the credit cannot be given to Muslims. It goes to their Hindu ancestors, because all Muslims were once Hindus.
Yeah, and this line that all Muslims were Hindus is something that we have heard from RSS many times, right?
Yeah, Mohan Bhagwat has said multiple times that all Muslims are Hindus. So it's a core RSS line. That is a line that Himanta Biswa Sharma is actually peddling right now. So he said that if the child is bright, then the credit goes to his Hindu ancestors. He said that there are no Muslims in this country, they are all Hindus.
And Deeptiman, with these chief ministers making these statements at an RSS event, what signal does it give you regarding how the party is going to tackle some of these national issues going forward?
Look, RSS events, when they see presence of BJP leaders or office bearers or chief ministers or ministers, it has generally been seen that it is an occasion for those leaders to assert or to project their ideological commitment to the core Sangh ideology. And it is very important in the BJP to show your ideological commitment, because at the end of the day, you need some RSS blessing to continue in office and continue to do well and move ahead in politics as far as the BJP is concerned. So they keep reiterating that, okay, we are committed to your core ideology, because BJP, RSS are strong ideology-based organizations. And it is very clear that if you do not have ideological commitments, you will not have a very bright future in the BJP. At least in the current BJP, which is completely steeped in RSS ideology, with the Prime Minister himself coming from the Sangh Parivar, Amit Shah having been very closely associated with the Sangh Parivar. And they have, in their 8-year rule, implemented a lot of RSS ideological projects. So at such a time, most politicians who are associated with the BJP seem to think that if we do not project our commitment to the political core ideology of the RSS, probably it will not give a good signal. So they keep saying these things on and on. And let's remember, Himanta Biswa Sarma has come from the Congress. So he has a greater burden of proving his commitment to the RSS ideology.
And next we talk about Assam. The state has been experiencing severe floods and landslides for the past few weeks. And what is significant is that this has happened even before the monsoons have officially started in the region. Because of the destruction they have caused, at least 15 people have died so far, and over 7 lakh lives have been affected. Indian Express's Tora Agarwala, who reports on the state for the paper, joins us to tell us more.
Yeah, so monsoons haven't officially begun in Assam, but from 10th or 11th May, we've seen a lot of devastation in Assam. It's not just floods, it's also a lot of landslides and mudslides, and these have claimed as of now more than 15 people in different parts of Assam. So there is South Assam, Barak Valley, which is affected by a lot of floods and also landslides. Then there is also areas in Middle Assam in places like Nagaon. These are the low-lying areas. Also a lot of floods there as well. People drowning in floodwaters very frequently. And the worst affected is this hill district called Dima Hasao, which is towards the south of Assam. And this particular district has seen unprecedented devastation in the last few weeks. It's been so bad that the district has been virtually cut off from the rest of the state. The road to the district has witnessed a lot of cave-ins, so it's not like cars can go through that road. The railway line to the district has also been breached at several points, and this particular railway line goes to other districts in Assam, which is the South Assam's Barak Valley districts, and they connect to Tripura, to Mizoram. So because this railway line has been affected, routes to that particular part of Assam and the rest of the northeast is also cut off because of this. And a few days back, there were a lot of photos going viral of the new half-long railway station, which is in Dima Hasao.
Yeah, in fact, in those photos, you can see train bogies that are overturned and railway tracks that are submerged in water.
Yeah. So the land below the railway tracks has disappeared, and there are pictures of railway tracks literally hanging from one cliff to another with nothing below. So those are the kind of photographs we are seeing. Now, if you look at photos from there, after the waters have receded, that also looks equally scary because there are bogies where it just filled with a lot of mud and a lot of debris. So even now the pictures are pretty scary. So a lot of devastation in the last few weeks. I mean, usually we don't experience it so early and with this much intensity.
And Tora, what do we know about why this is happening? What are the possible reasons behind this destruction?
Yeah, so one thing is that the amount of rainfall has increased. So this is pre-monsoonal rainfall, and usually, I mean, I had looked at the Met reports from previous years. So usually between March to May, the normal amount of rainfall is usually 434.5 millimeters. But this year, between March and May, it's almost 719 millimeters. So this is a 65% excess. And the Met Department has categorized this as a large excess. This is not just in Assam. Many other states in the northeast are also experiencing an increase in rainfall. Meghalaya has an excess of 137% this time. So a lot of rain very early, and experts I spoke to said that the pattern of rainfall has changed because of climate change, basically. So the rainfall intensity, its arrival and departure times have all changed because of the way the patterns of climate is changing all across the world.
Okay, so heavy rainfall is one aspect of it, but the other aspect is also the kind of constructions that have taken place in the area and which have led to several landslides. And you spoke to some experts about this. What did they have to tell you?
Yeah, floods in other parts of Assam, what we are seeing now in districts like Kamrup and Borpeta and Nagaon, obviously these are very devastating, but this kind of flooding happens almost like a clockwork every year. What people didn't expect was what happened in a place like Dima Hasao, also in places like Kachar, which is also hilly, is the amount of landslides, okay? And just to focus on Dima Hasao, well, I mean, one good example of looking at this is the railway line I was talking about earlier. So this is called the Lamding-Badarpur railway line, and it connects the rest of the country to Dima Hasao and beyond, then to the Barak Valley Hill districts, then to Mizoram and Tripura and states like that. So in the late 90s, they decided to convert it from meter gauge to broad gauge. And from 97 and through 2000s, they kept trying to do it, but it didn't really work out just because, it's such a challenge to do it over there, just because of the topography of the land. But finally, in 2015, they did manage to inaugurate the broad gauge meter line. And obviously, it was very celebrated and all of that. But in the lead up to 2015, there were a lot of, red flags about this particular construction.
Yeah, and you write that there were audit reports that said it was unsafe. And even after it was inaugurated, they had to close the track a number of times because reports said that it was unsafe for passengers to travel through it due to the landslides that could happen there, right?
Yeah, but despite that, project just went through. And there are allegations that corners were cut during construction. So allegations are rife about this construction, a lot of warnings, yet the government went ahead with it. And years later, possibly this is what it has resulted in, that large parts of the track have just disappeared. And railway officials I spoke to, even they said that, the losses we've incurred after this spell of rain, it's going to take us like ages to fix this. So it's a combination of all this, I just gave you the example of one railway track, but Dima Hasao has also seen a lot of unplanned construction. There is also allegation of riverbed mining, basically meaning taking stones out of the riverbed to sell it outside. So the allegation is that this is done in collusion with politicians over there. So generally, just a lot of let's say development has happened, and that has caused the environment over there.
Yeah, and the other thing you write is that for a long time, projects in the region would take place in the shadow of insurgency. How would that affect these projects?
Yeah, so Dima Hasao, like the rest of Assam, has been shaped by a lot of conflicts and insurgency. Insurgency in Dima Hasao, while it has reduced in the last, say, 5 to 8 years, the 90s and early 2000s saw a lot of insurgent groups active. Any kind of development project you wanted to do there, the government had to sort of pay off these insurgent groups, right? So I was speaking to a researcher, and he told me that it's possible that after, paying so much, you really, just to get the project ahead, it is likely that the government would also rush through it. At that point, the project has taken so long, you've already paid so much money. So then, it's just like a vicious cycle. You also want to finish your work, then there is history of conflict which holds you back. So things like this, basically.
Okay, and right now you have been talking about Dima Hasao and places in Assam, but have such projects happened in other parts of the Northeast as well?
Yeah, so even you go to Arunachal Pradesh, even Arunachal Pradesh has reported a number of landslides, and not just this time, but over the past few years. And that's also because there's been a lot of highway construction in the state. And again, it's hilly, right? So as a result, a lot of landslides are happening there, claiming lives. Like every monsoon, this happens. And for Arunachal, there's another reason because, it borders China. So the government usually cites, say, national security to sort of just quicken the pace of projects. Then you can sort of basically speed through process and show in your development report card before every election that, look, this is what we have done. But this is happening at the cost of the environment, and that is why it's leading to landslides and, mudslides and just devastation every year.
And in the end, we talk about COVID-19. INSACOG, which has been keeping track of the mutations in the COVID-19 virus and the emerging variants, yesterday confirmed the first case of the BA.5 subvariant of Omicron in the country. The variant was detected in an 80-year-old man from Telangana who had no history of international travel. To talk about this more, Anonna Dutt, who reports on health for the paper, joins us. So, Anonna, what do we know about this subvariant so far?
So basically, there are two subvariants of the Omicron variant that led to the January surge in cases in India, BA4 and BA5. These were first detected in South Africa in January, and they led to a fifth wave over there. Another good thing about this is that the wave that we saw in South Africa did not lead to an increase in hospitalizations, increase in deaths, which was something that we saw with our own Omicron wave as well. Now, INSACOG has recently, over the last 2 weeks, confirmed 2 cases of BA4 and 1 case of BA5 in India. And out of that, 1 person with BA4 had a history of travel to South Africa, but the other 2 do not have any international travel history. So it's safe to assume that the variants are now in India. Now, the thing is, why initially these 2 variants caused a little bit of concern with the scientists is that these 2 variants have 2 mutations. The most important one is L452R, which was also seen in the Delta variant. So in lab studies, it shows that with this mutation, it was better able to evade antibodies from a previous infection or vaccination. And also in mice, it led to more effect on the lungs than Omicron usually causes. But of course, we haven't seen this translate into a real world scenario. There wasn't any increase in, oxygen requirement, etc., seen in South Africa. So hopefully that is what we are likely to see in India as well.
Okay, so no requirement for oxygen supply and no significant increase in hospitalizations. But could this variant lead to a wave in India, just like it did in South Africa?
So yes, that is a possibility because at least the lab studies seem to suggest that these 2 variants are not very similar to BA1 and BA2, which is what led to the third wave in India. So since it's a little different, it's better able to evade the immune response that we've already had so far. So there could be an increase in infections, the number of infections. But at the same time, because we've had previous exposure to so many variants and at a very high rate, almost like it seems to me that entire population might have had the infection once. Plus, we have had a very good vaccination record. So the 2 together provide a hybrid immunity, which should prevent any severe disease. It's a similar scenario that we've seen in South Africa. So experts believe that, yes, it might lead to an increase in the number of cases, but that alone doesn't matter because it would be something like a flu. You get a fever, you get a cold, and you recover. We likely will not see an increase in, what we saw in the Delta wave, people getting sick, lungs getting affected, people needing hospitalization, oxygen, etc. We shouldn't see that with these 2 variants.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.